everybody. Welcome back to the Music Buds podcast. This is episode number 37, and my name is Henry. This week, I'm honored to be joined by Ritzy Bryan, the lead singer and guitarist for the Joy Formidable. Ritzy, as I had mentioned to you beforehand, we met very, very briefly a couple years ago at a show, and I do love this band, so thank you very much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. Well, how's life, first of all?
It's been, it's obviously been a really strange, kind of unique year and a half, really. Lots of plans changed, but I think we've taken it in our stride, and we've had to adapt quite a bit to the no touring, and feel very lucky that in a way we haven't been too disrupted. Certainly last year was a recording year, or certainly a recording period for us. It's been kind of heartbreaking to see like how many bands have had their touring changed, and their revenue, and their plans for the future, and how is the music industry going to recover. But there's no point worrying about it. I mean, that's my philosophy. We just got to kind of move with it, change, enjoy that. We've enjoyed the creativity. I mean, we've written a lot. It's given us a lot of extra studio time that we didn't think we were going to have. So just kind of concentrating on those positives, really, and hoping for, a change to start happening, really. Yeah. Yeah,
no, I agree. I mean, it can be hard to be optimistic with everything going on, but sometimes you just gotta try, and it can make things livable,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you do, I think it's given us a little bit of time to contemplate. I think that's the one thing that you kind of don't realize when you're making albums and then touring. It's like everything's very fast, and you end up in a kind of like I don't know, in a flow that you don't realize sometimes that you haven't stepped back for a moment and really thought, like, what are some of the other things that I might want to do creatively at the same time? So, I mean, that's like you said, that's the optimistic approach to things, without getting, shaking your fist at the world too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess kind of kicking things off a little bit, how is it that you got started in music, and or how did the band first come to be? Was music something you had always wanted to do?
No, I think I was very musically shy. I mean, I had a lot of music at home in North Wales. My family were big record collectors, and there was a lot of instruments in it. And I often say that there wasn't much silence. I was an only child, but our house was really noisy all the time growing up. So just a big passion, of mine growing up. But I think I was incredibly shy with it. I was like kind of just lots of hours spent in my bedroom playing guitar and writing, but I never, I kind of like spent most of my youth thinking that I was going to be like an ornithologist or a naturalist or something, because I was really into nature and animals. And then it wasn't really until I met Ridgeon, that I actually kind of felt confident enough to, okay, maybe sharing is okay. is okay. So that was that was kind of the big push, really, was meeting him and writing together. Otherwise, I think I would have just probably just enjoyed it as something that would have always been a huge part of me, but not necessarily thinking I was going to share it with a bigger audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how did the first album come to be? Were you just writing songs and you managed to get some released, or how did that first project happen?
Wow. 10 years ago now, actually. It's Big Raw just passed its 10-year anniversary. Yeah. So, looking back at those days, we'd been in one band together, Ridgeon and I, and it ended very badly, because I've been in quite a few since being pretty young, been in lots of different bands and collaborated, and in school and college and that. But the one just previous to the Joy Formidable with Bridgem was a humdinger of a breakup. It's pretty messed up. And I think we kind of went away from that experience just quite changed. And that kind of marked us writing together, because I joined that band as a guitarist primarily, and I was kind of still doing my own writing on the side, but I hadn't really brought it over. So the Big Roar was very much, and the first EP as well, A Balloon Called Moaning, they were very explorative albums for us, where we were trying to see how Ridgy and I could actually come together and collaborate and write as a pair, because before that it'd been very, very separate. I don't think we'd kind of seen how our aesthetics would blend.
Yeah.
And it was the beginning was very passionate and headstrong, and lots of butting heads and arguing and putting holes in walls.
Oh man.
And the result of that was really the Big Roar. Well, it's quite aggro.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the hard thing is, like, with collaboration, there's many great things about it, but of course you are working with people, and so you won't know until you try it, and so of course there can always be those the good parts and the bad parts. So
for sure. And I think we knew straight away that we had like I said, and we were going through quite a bit at the time as well, and certainly myself on a personal level, like I had gone through a real period of change, and I hadn't quite got to grips with how to cope with some of the things that I was going through, and I think a lot of it came out in being a bit fighty. Sure. I was angry, and then throw into the mold that music, the cathartic nature of music, but also mixed with that kind of youthful kind of, feeling a little bit lost, and at the same time trying to find a working way with somebody who'd become quite familiar to me. Yeah, it was a pretty interesting time. I look back on it now, like we're still as passionate as we've always been, but I think we're a bit mellower. We discuss things a bit less spicy than
talk it out.
Right. Yeah. So.
Well, and I on the Big Roar, I mean, even with all of that said, I wanted to make sure to tell you, not only is that album, it's one of my favorite albums just of all time, but the song Cradle, which is this really like quick, fun, energetic song. It may sound like overblown, but I really mean it. It's honestly rare a day goes by that I don't listen to it. And it always gets me energized for the day, or it keeps me going. And I just wanted to make sure to tell you how much of an impact that song in particular has had on me for years now.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. And as long as you don't watch the video every day, a lot of people said that made them feel pretty pukey.
Oh, right. Yeah. But anyhow, so talking about, obviously, last year we, no one was really able to tour. Has touring been, I know you did tour with the Foo Fighters for a bit. Has touring been, I'm sure it's maybe an obvious answer, but has it been a really cool part of being in the band? Oh,
I mean, I would say it's been at the absolute core of this band. And so I think that's when we realized that all our tour dates had been cancelled. I mean, they've all been cancelled for this year, I think, as well. We're starting to, I mean, I won't be too hasty. We'll wait and see on a couple, but it's looking like a lot of things are even getting moved into next year, Yeah. So I think it's really, it's been a huge part of this band because, we've taken quite an interesting route. We've had quite an interesting journey, not had an easy time sometimes. I mean, no regrets, but looking back on our recorded history, we've had quite an up and down kind of relationship with releases and labels, and we've been very fixed on always wanting to release music that we're passionate about. It's not always made it easy with some of the, I don't know, just the trends and the politics of
Sure.
music. I kind of feel like we've stayed just kind of very on vision with what we've always wanted as a band, and releasing the albums that we've always wanted to. And I guess the simple part of the band, or, when I say simple, but the bit that has never ever been polluted is always the live side. Like, it feels like nobody can really mess with that side of things. You go out, you play the songs that you want, the tour that you want, the routing that you want, you get to connect with your audience. That's always felt really truthful and real to me. The business side of things has always been the bit that is, I'm sure so many artists would say the same. It's been the bit that we've all, we've certainly had a certain amount of struggles with. So to kind of lose that touring side,
sure.
I think again, going back to that idea of adapting, I think it's made us really, we've already brought such a lot of things in-house, and we've been, doing a lot as a band ourselves. I think it's made us even more think about like how now is an artist going to maintain themselves, and what can you do, and how can you get the control back when the one kind of place where you did have that was touring, when that disappears. How can you kind of keep control of your music and the releases, and still, manage to finance everything? And I think we're certainly in a very, strange time for some of that. And I been reaching out to quite a lot of friends who are in bands and wondering, what how they're feeling at the moment, and what does this bring to artists in 2021. But I kind of feel like we've launched our music club. That's been a fucking huge thing for us. We launched it in 2019, so it's been going for a while, but it's come into its own. Just the focus on it has just completely changed, and I think we would have gone even crazier than we are if we hadn't have had that to really throw ourselves into. It's been an incredibly empowering kind of side of the band, in terms of being able to maintain that connection, but also, the reality of funding future music and being able to fund going back out on the road, and, that's been huge for us. So it's interesting to see, how artists are adapting at the moment so that they will still have a future when the venues open again, and not just artists, the venues have their own, trials that they're going through at the moment as well. So lots of change. Yeah.
It isn't odd to think about how like there will be bands and artists that will release an album, last year, but then you think, okay, when are they actually going to be able to go on tour? It's such I can imagine as an artist, it would be so frustrating because, you've been working for all this time on this or that. And then you're like, oh, wait, when am I going to actually have the chance to go out and play and connect with people? So I can imagine that's quite a tough time for so many people.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they're not to be compared really, because we've been doing a lot of online shows through the music club. And like I said, at least that's allowed us to, I think we've been able to dip into our back catalogue and play things that we hadn't played for a long time, and kind of keep all the excitement and the creativity from a live perspective still very much alive. We've been swapping it up. We did a holiday charity concert, and we just did a Valentine's Day show where we were doing music, love song, some love covers as well that fans had suggested, and that. That is, like I said, like I've mentioned before, that doing those online shows, they're not the same, but it's still, with what we have at the moment, it's still a way of, like you said, connecting, and still being able to be creative, and still not forgetting how to fucking play your instrument, because recorded is one thing, like, just actually, being in a room together. So,
yeah. And in terms of playing, like, I mean, one thing that's great about this band is you have these like really like so many epic songs, like the ever-changing Spectrum of a Lie from The Big Roar, or The Leopard and the Lung from Wolf's Law. Like, is that, I'm sure recording those kinds of songs is a challenge in itself, but is getting to play like a 6-7 minute long song live pretty intense, just in terms of the amount of time and effort that goes into it? Or is it fairly normal for all of them, the same?
It's interesting. We've never thought about it like that. I mean, when you mention things like the ever-changing spectrum of a lie, like I do have memories of being in the studio with that one, because we wrangled that one down like a wild horse. It was it took some. We had the bones of a lot of it, but the way what it actually ended up evolving into, it was a process, and it's such an emotional song as well. I think, it's an interesting one. I think we're quite thoughtful about when we play them live. I think, like, for us, because we obviously, won't lie, we do like a good jam out. So, yeah. But I think it's about finding that balance. I think we're always kind of aware not to get too wanky with everything as well, So it's like finding that, get a bit high fidelity. It's almost like finding that perfect playlist almost when you bring a set to an audience. And I think you want those moments where you can, you've obviously written something that's quite lengthy, intense, or quite emotive. And then, but you can create light and shade with some other tracks or the vibe of things. I mean, we, normally in a set we'll bring some acoustic stuff into things, only because we're frightened for the people that are stood next to Mr. Thomas, that they're gonna walk away never being able to hear again. So I think there's always a thoughtful approach to your set list in terms of creating enough movement.
And also, along with those like epic songs, like the song Cicada, and many others like it, they have you have a really great, I guess, for lack of a better term, like very, like a lot of world instruments, it sounds like, or at least a lot of sounds that feel not just tied down to what, one culture, one country. How is it that you come up with, like, when you're, songwriting, whatever the process may be, how is it that you're thinking about those cool sounds? Is that just because of your own upbringing, or is it connections you've made in your life?
I think it might be something to do with, I think we've always kind of enjoyed experimenting, because we've produced ourselves and we're self-recorded for a lot of years now. And, the last few records we've mixed ourselves as two. So I suppose we're very, very involved. And I think, there's that quite natural approach to every album where, like I said, it's quite unconscious, like I notice it's just happened, when I look back across the back catalogue, we'll make a really live sounding album like Hitch, but that's followed on the tails of something that's been quite orchestral and quite composed, like Wolf's Law. And then, after Hitch, we want to go out full out. We go a little bit more collagey and a bit more experimenting with Adth. And like I said, it's hard to actually trace where that comes from. I think it's definitely the wanting to kind of change things with every, not be too formulaic, or just over the span of time that you start becoming more interested in, one method of recording versus another. And I think part of that is the instrumentation. Hitch was very much like we wanted to capture the aesthetic of our live performance. So it was quite pure in the three of us being together. And then you come out of that and you're like, want to start tinkering with what else is there in the studio that we can, get our hands on, and wanting to, and even things like the guitar sounds, there's moments where it's nice to have like a really kind of, just a really natural guitar sound. And other times it's really nice to kind of really warp that, where people don't actually realize that it's a guitar. It actually is something that's more synthetic sounding as well. So I think maybe we've been faced with enough color in the studios, but it's not always like we've had all the toys in the playground to play around with either. So sometimes with that, you stretch what you do have. And I think the biggest thing for us is feeling really energized when we come back into the studio, whatever has caused that, and that in itself brings these little changes and of approach, I suppose, with each record. I don't know, is that natural? I think it's probably fairly natural with anybody who's like writes and is creative, wanting to step out and step back in and then go in a different direction.
Yeah. And I think in terms of experimentation, I feel like that's always so creatively exciting because you never know what you're going to find, and you never know what the end result will be. And so I think that in the best way is kind of one of the things I associate with your band, is that I feel like from album to album, I never know what the next one is going to be. And so it's so exciting to hear the next kind of creation because it could be so varied. So that's pretty cool. Well, I mean, of course, there are so many different things we could talk about, but in terms of the like songwriting, is it pretty collaborative, or are you coming up with things on your own and then coming together as a group and talking about it, or is it all fairly centralized?
It's gone back and forth over the years. Well, we just finished making a record together. This was, again, I think Richard and I have doesn't feel like too formulaic, but I think we find a good moment. Like, it doesn't feel like anybody leads too much. It feels like we come together, we get really jointly excited over each other's ideas, and sometimes they turn into something where it's changed quite a lot from that very, first, that we almost forget whose it was. We come to, who wrote, did anybody, could anybody say that they, could take a fuller credit on this? Others stay a bit more true to, where it was originally conceived. It's very much, I think that's the thing that's grown such a lot in this band. It's become such an interesting flow. Like I said, there's odd tracks where we do forget whose voice did lead with it. So I mean, that kind of shows that level of trust and intuition that comes with it. Really different from those early days, I suppose, where it was almost kind of quite a frightening thought of sharing something that you'd written with another person, like with I just used to get quite shy, and you feel vulnerable that you're putting yourself out there. It's nice when you get to a level of real trust and truth with somebody, where you can, like I said, and we can both be. The thing that I've noticed on this album, neither of us, I think because we've had the extra time, occasionally we'll make kind of allowances. Sounds like we're being kind of too diplomatic, but like if one of the writers is really passionate about one of the songs, we'll say, okay, and that's why some of the albums, they sometimes, when I listen back, they feel like all of a sudden they go to a different place. Well, it's because it's it's more original, me or more me. It's kind of all of a sudden gone into a different zone. I feel on this record, we've kind of both said we both have to absolutely believe and love in every track jointly.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe made for an album that we both, I don't know, maybe both can enjoy completely equally. I don't know if that sounds like harsh on some of our other material, but there's just been such a lot of creativity. I think we haven't put anything on this record where we've sort of said, oh, I don't know, where we didn't say, okay, I know that track means a lot to you, so we'll put that on the record, even though it's got a bit of a different fucking style to the rest of the record. I wouldn't say that they've been bad concessions, but there has been some of that in the past. And this one it feels like a very consistent, I don't know, it feels like there's one voice on this record, even though there's not. It feels like it's met in this really different place to some of the other records where you can maybe tell, or maybe you can't, that there's two songwriters in this band.
Yeah. Well, I think that is just kind of the cool thing with, a group, a partnership like that is, over the years, as you were saying, you become more and more comfortable. And at times, all the lines can cross at the right moment, and you can get, this really cohesive, singular creation, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, Ritzy, it's so nice talking to you. And it's this music is something I really enjoy. Is there something in particular that I haven't touched on that you'd like to bring up in terms of something coming up? I mean, you've talked already about this record you've recorded. Is there anything else in particular? I don't want to leave anything unsaid.
No, like I said, we got a new, it's all starting to get really exciting for us in terms of like this process of starting to share things. Like we've just finished the album, it all starts becoming a bit more real and realized. We just finished the album artwork, and the tracks been, the album's gone, all been mastered. It's gone to get cut for vinyl and all that sort of fun stuff. We'll start getting test pressing soon. And so I think we're just excited to share that. And we're still, I think the big thing is still evolving this. I touched on it before when I was saying about the music club, but I think we've been very excited in involving this. How do artists now keep control over their material and the sustainability of, and offering something maybe a bit special to maybe the way that sometimes things get watered down on other platforms. Because bands have spread very thin now between lots of different technologies, that sometimes I feel like sometimes the music is a bit lost and the story is a little bit lost. And we've just been, like I said, that's been a really, if anything has come from this time off the road, I think that's been something that we've been contemplating on quite a bit. So with a new site and the music club and all of that evolving, and obviously there's a lot of extra music that comes from that. So as well as the new record, I suppose there's just a lot of other songs and tracks and online shows kind of growing there as well. So that would be the big thing at the moment is, for sure, if you really like a band and you're into them, and obviously we can all tell, I mean, everybody's suffering in different ways at the moment. Everybody's trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. But if you do, like I said, I think finding a way to still support artists directly is a really extra big deal at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, things have changed such a lot. So
yeah,
that's it, really.
Yeah. And I also in terms of that, but also just in terms of sharing it with people, while, platforms like Spotify and all these other things can be easy and accessible, for me at least, like having that physical CD or a piece of merchandise really, like, it kind of gives you that reminder of like, this is was made by people, and it's like you kind of have that connection. So I totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, okay, well, great. Well, I mean, Ritzy, thank you so much again for taking the time. Please come back whenever you would like, maybe when the next record rolls around or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you again. And I hope that, I wish you the best with everything, and just, stay safe, okay?
Yeah, same to you. Thank you so much for the conversation today. Let me, there's Jack. If you wonder what's been rummaging around on my knees, very clingy. Very clingy pug, aren't you?
Bye.
It's lovely talking to you today, and thank you very much.
All right, everybody, I think that is about it for the show this week. Please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe on your way out. You can also follow the podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Music Buds. Check out themusicbuds.com. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, and we'll see you next time.